Welcome back to the Electrify podcast, brought to you by the creators of Electrify Expo, North America's largest EV festival, coming to a major city near you. All right. Well, this is a special one. This gentleman I've known for quite some time, and now you're going to get to know him a little bit more, but obviously his company, who he works for. But this gentleman has kind of seen it all, 2 wheels, 4 wheels on a personal level, but primarily 4 wheels. He works for Falken Tire. Bakari Howard. He's the passenger, light truck, and motorcycle events manager for Falken Tire. And it's great because Falken Tire is the presenting sponsor of Electrify Expo Outdoor Recreational. That's right. And we talked about this, Bakari, like the progression of what Falken as a tire company is doing. And I always say, like, before we hit record, and I didn't say it before I did, but we were just talking about bikes, and you're talking about you acquiring your own little hot rod of your own. We'll get into that. But the evolution of tires, everybody kind of takes it for granted, right? I'm just going to say it. I'm a big dumb animal. I'm a Neanderthal. It's the it's the toilet paper of the automotive world, because you just use them and abuse them. You don't think about it. It's always there. You know, either it be dude wipes or it's a traditional toilet paper. It's, you know, depending on how nice a person's house is. But tires are such like a critical component of your experience, either it be off-road, on-road performance, off-road performance, and now EV. That is a large dialogue. And again, not exclusive to EV, but obviously primarily EV. But first and foremost, Bakari, how we doing, bud?
I'm good, man. You know, I think to just kind of get on the coattails of that, no one wants a one-ply piece of toilet paper. You got to get that premium stuff. You got to get that 2-ply, that cushy stuff, right? Everyone wants that Charmin. You want your tissue clean and nice.
and a lot of my friends lately, they're like, dude wipes and like the what? Like, I mean, anyways, sorry. We're going down the tangent, which I always think is fun because people are like, what are we listening to here? This is Electrify News. Yeah, it is. It is electrifying. Dude, and you go to a nice house, and again, not without naming brands, you see that nice toilet, you're like, this is a nice house. So,
or hotel.
A hotel, right? Dude, so good to see you. I haven't seen you physically in quite some time, and obviously we know each other from the drifting world. Falken, 19-year supporter of Formula Drift, and obviously it's not goodbye. It's see you later. I feel like you'll come around eventually again, but I'm stoked to have you on the EV front. What does that entail when your title talks about the presenting sponsor of Electrify Expo Outdoor Recreational? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, you know, I think the big thing it means to me is there's this new space with like EV trucks, right? And I think it was funny. I was at lunch with some guys that were all like Tesla show cars, right? Because predominantly, like when you go to these Electrify Expo, that's mostly what you see, the Model 3s or other Teslas, because they've been around so long. So aftermarket companies really support them. And we were just chatting it like, you know, like what EV trucks are there, right? You got Ford, you got Rivian, you got Tesla's, you know, variant. So they're coming along. And I think that with us being in this space, it's really important for us to make sure that we have a tire that's specific to the needs of some of these consumers, but everyone's different, right? And I think that, you know, I had the chance to really dig into Long Beach this past weekend and really see what other manufacturers are like coining EV. And surprisingly, right, like a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the explanation of what the features are very similar to ours. And so I just start asking customers, like, what are you looking for? Like, you know, I know it's a hot button EV, like, but like, what do you want to sell to your tires? If you had a Rivian, what do you do with it? You know, like a lot of people are like, yeah, man, I'm going off road. I'm doing the stuff. You know, I bought it because it's like an adventure vehicle. And, you know, that being said, it's like you want a tire at the end of the day for a truck that you're going off road with to be rugged, durable. You want it to be able to take you to where you want to be away from other people, but at the same time, it needs to get you home. So that tire for these recreational vehicles still has to be the foundation of a tire, right? And I think that's the most important takeaway. Like we had a really awesome Tundra in our booth, which is hybrid, and it got a ton of attention, right? It had all the tints and all the things, but you know, you talk about that particular application and you talk about the weight of all those accessories, right, on that vehicle, and knowing that it has the right tire to carry all that weight without having any issues. It's going to be really important. So as we go down this road with a lot of these trucks, people are going to want to do more than just say, hey, I bought this just because it's EV and I'm commuting. It's like, hey, on the weekends, man, I want to put some gear on it and me and the family are going to go out of town and we're going to go explore. And so having a good tire like our AT4W, which just came out, is going to be a really good accentuation of those vehicles.
And Tesla was widely criticized coming out of the gate on the lack of the factory tire. And again, not without naming names, on you talked about it there, the weight distribution, tire attrition, how long they were lasting. We're not, talking about ripping around. Obviously, the Teslas are capable, but some of those tires did not hold up. So there are manufacturers that are making specific ones for road. But that's what I love about this conversation, because this is totally something else. My buddy builds, I was talking to him yesterday, Santiago. He owns Rogue Vans down in San Diego. They build these amazing, overland vans. And he was talking about building some electric overland things. And you look at overland as a market too. It's like, what is this? And there's, people have been doing it for a while, but just like drifting, just like any other motorsport, the access to parts and the access to that experience become widely available now. There are options, there are things, how you experience it. That's what I was, it came up and said, bloop, hey, Bakari Howard's going to be your guest, Falken Tires. And I read the thing. I was like, what? And we've talked about doing different activation. I think it's cool, going to the Sea Otter, right? Going to the Bay Area. And that's kind of your customer, right? Right before we hit record, you said you're getting a new hot rod, you're getting a new YT electric, and that's just that evolution. So leveling up.
Totally.
To talk now more brand specific, because obviously it's edutainment. We're entertaining, but we're educating people here. What does this AT have to offer? Is it EV specific? Like, drop some knowledge, because you do a great job of hosting videos. I'll walk into some shops and some tire shops and hey, there's Bakari, and you do a good job of educating stuff in a fun way. But walk through your whole Falken tire lineup, and again, not just off road and overlanding, but what else?
Yeah, so the big one for us this year was obviously the AT4W, and that's our Wild Peak family, and that's coming off like a legacy brand. AT3W did an excellent job for us over the years. I believe that tire came out like 2015. So, typically most tires for manufacturers, they're like around a pretty good amount of time, right? I would say in your car world, you could say maybe 5 to 7 years before there's like changes in chassis design. I mean, some kind of last longer than others. Some Toyotas have been around over 10 years, right? But we decided it was time to definitely make a change on the AT3W to the 4W. And some of the things we considered were definitely the individuals that are off-roading, whether you're EV or non-EV, right? Like, we added 3-ply sidewalls to a lot of the sizes, which is important for off-roading, because not only is it going to give you that protection when you air down, but you also have, added sidewall protection. And that's like 3 physical plies, right? It's a lot when you start talking in these worlds of individuals and applications, and everyone seems to need a load range E on a Tacoma or 4Runner. And in reality, when you really think about that, they're thinking about these load ranges as if they're necessarily a stronger tire. It's like, well, they can carry more weight, right? It's like the air is a strength. The more air you add, the more the tire can carry. But in reality, when you think about some of these higher load ranges on these small vehicles, like, you're not going to carry 15,000 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. And some of these tires can carry in excess of that. So, going back to the EV conversation, right? Like, having the right fitment application for that vehicle that's not too heavy, right? But is meeting the threshold of load carrying capacity, but also giving you a lot of the features you're going to need when you're off-roading or on-roading, right? When it's quiet, right? The AT4W, the way it's designed, it's a quieter AT just because the voids aren't as wide as, say, for our RT or even MT, right? So you're going to have that added protection there as far as just NVH. I mean, obviously it is an AT, so it's not like a super silent tire, but I think that's kind of like the give and take, right? If you know that you're going to be going off-road and you want to have traction off-road, having a tire that's capable is going to be a really beneficial thing. Like, we did a really good kind of comparison video with an influencer, and he had a Rivian, and just kind of let him do his thing. And he really broke down the OE tire that came on that truck versus ours, and his, justification of why he went with this tire and his lifestyle, right? So, and there's going to be a lot of people like that, right? I mean, obviously you could put the tints on and do all the stuff and never go off road, but I think a lot of people are really pushing the limits of these vehicles because they are something different. and they really want to do the off-road thing outside of the normal Jeep, Toyota brand. Outside of the 4W, we've also have our Zenith FK460, which we're adding a new technology called Silent Core. So Silent Core essentially is adding a foam insert in the tire. And this is really right up an EV owner's avenue. So more so for like passenger cars, some of your sporty crossovers, things of that nature. But it definitely aids in noise vibration harshness. So as you're kind of rolling down the road, it's going to give you the grip you need because it is a ultra high performance all season tire. That's a big one too. I mean, we've done some surveys at some of these events and noticed that people do like to drive EVs a little more like their race day, right? Because that instant torque, it's a good feeling. I can get out of the way. It's like when motorcycles, stoplight turns green, they're always the first one to leave. And a lot of people are kind of driving EVs like that, right? They're just accelerating in front of everyone else. So, over time, that does put a lot of wear and tear on a tire. So to have a tire that is going to actually get the mileage that the manufacturer says, and more from a replacement side, right? Because a lot of your factory OE tires typically don't come with mileage warranties. I mean, there are some variances between brands, but a lot of times it doesn't behoove a tire manufacturer to offer a tire to an OE that has 80,000 miles, right? Because the tire would last longer than the owner of that vehicle. If you're leasing, right? If a lease is only 3 years, you'd probably never get a tire replacement. So, that's why a lot of times like, oh, the factory tires don't last as long. It's like a lot of times that's kind of by design, right? Because, the manufacturer's like, we want you to come into service. We want you to spend money. And it kind of helps out those retail chains where whatever brand it is. So this new FK460 is going to be a really solid tire geared towards the EV community. And we actually had one on display at the event this last weekend in Long Beach.
That is so cool. I just, me, I golf a lot, and I'm just looking at technology of clubs, applying carbon fiber, carbon Kevlar, foam to this is just hitting on the right notes. And that's what's always interesting about EV is like some people like it's too quiet, right? But I think that's just such a great attribute about it. You can have a conversation. It's self-driving. Just this experience is just elevated. Anybody that's a naysayer just hasn't really experienced it to, I think, the degree, overall. Are we expecting a Falken EV off-road vehicle displayed Electrify Expo? I mean, you talked about the hybrid, the Tundra, but like you said, I'd love to see a Rivian Overland, or whatever truck suits your fancy, Cybertruck.
Yeah, we're definitely working on something. I actually met with some owners and chatted with them at Long Beach and really trying to work with them on getting booth vehicles for us. I mean, obviously, I think for it to be in the booth, we kind of wanted to be like super like in your face. I think we've used Neil's Mach-E, which is kind of like a rally edition car. That vehicle gets a lot of attention, right? I mean, you see it and you're like, whoa, like the colors, the wheels, like all the stuff. So we definitely need something similar to that. I think when I see a lot of Rivian owners, and I just need to do some more searching, is two reasons. I think a lot of owners aren't going like the full distance yet. I mean, with like crazy aftermarket wheels, gnarly like accessories. I mean, there are some, but there are a little bit of hindrances, right? Because if those come with like a 22, you're kind of limited to maybe a 20 because of the brake size, right? So you're not going with those traditional 17s and 18-inch, which we have a good amount of sizes in 20s, but it's just finding those vehicles is really what it is. So I think a lot of these events for us is scouting for future vehicles that we could put in our booth. As we kind of leave the West Coast and we're going to be on the East Coast, it gets a little more challenging, right? But I'm working with some of our partners in the East for the New York round and then also Austin. So the goal is to have some all EV truck vehicles in our booth. So, and sprinkle in a Tesla too, just because we need something for the passenger car side. Just to have both, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does say motorcycle within your title, and it is that just for people that don't know, is that because again it says motorcycle on your deal. Is Falken making motorcycle tires anytime soon?
Yeah, so with Dunlop is our sister company. So here in North America, we operate as Sumitomo Rubber North America. Under that umbrella is going to be Falken Tire, which essentially Falken would create tires in segments of passenger, light truck, commercial, or sometimes known as truck bus radial, TBR. So that's our major focus in regards to what Falken does. But then Dunlop Motorcycle Tire is our sister company. So we're under the same umbrella essentially. And Dunlop Motorcycles, everything two wheel, whether it's, you know, anything dirt bike wise, street bike, Harley, they're huge. I think the last time I checked, their market share in two wheels like almost 60%. So
Jeez.
it's massive. Yeah, like
Yeah.
they're big. Yeah, we'll go and we have a dual branded setup, which is like we'll do Falken and Dunlop at a lot of the Supercross events. And there's no shortage of people that don't ride Dunlop, right? Everyone's like,
Right.
I ride Dunlop. I know what that is. Like, you know, they're super into the brand. So and then the other events we'll do is like Moto America events, which is like now you could say it's King of the Baggers and your traditional like sport bike racing. So we'll activate at those events with our dual brand. So I'll manage that. But in regards to Dunlop having like an EV specific tire, not yet, right? And I think for a lot of reasons they're probably still trying to figure it out. Like we do have two EV vehicles on display. One is like a Ninja EV, and then we have a KTM SX EV. So it's a similar, if you've ever been to a Supercross event, it's like what the little kids are riding, which is like equivalent to like a 65, maybe 50cc dirt bike. So those little guys get a lot of attention, those bikes, because a lot of people, one, don't really know like what the deals with Dunlop. They're like, why is Dunlop here? And then two, like they're just cool. Like, you know, when we did Phoenix or Glendale, there was really no other like OE bike manufacturers, like motorcycle manufacturers there. Like this round, I did see Kawasaki was there, which I was surprised. But yeah, when people saw that Ninja, they're like, "What's this? I've never seen this. It's all EV." We're like, "Yeah," and so is this bike. So yeah, it was just kind of like a cross promotion with our brands. I think that the Dunlop brand, obviously, you know, they're making quality tires across the board. So, you know, talking with some of their product planning management team, I'm sure there's some things on the horizon, but it's so fairly new. I think when you really look at like EV motorcycles, there's been a couple brands that have made some things, but seeing Kawasaki's display and seeing that hybrid bike, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like you guys are really kind of embracing this and really moving it forward. So it's funny. I talk to people about just, you know, and I'm sure you've seen it, but how many kids now are riding e-bicycles, and that transition is ultimately probably going to lead to more motorcycle sales, right? Because now you have a market that isn't really scared of two wheels, because the speed on some of these e-bikes and what they could do, like 30, 35 miles per hour, some even faster, right? So that fear of getting on two wheels and saying like, hey, this is a viable means of transportation for me, maybe as a young adult or as I go to college, it's going to be a lot more easy and attainable. Whereas now I think most motorcycles are kind of more driven out of like pleasure versus like means of transportation, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I see like all the brands, whether it's a Super 73, a Ciron, whatever brand typically are at my house. I mean, these kids are like riding them to high school now, right? They're just taking my Super 73 to high school. I'm ripping down the path, right? So that fear of taking that next step into whether it's an EV motorcycle or hybrid motorcycle, that transition is going to be a lot easier. So I think in the future, there will be more concerns with like an EV specific tire, but now it's still fairly new, right? I think there's been like the Zeros. They've kind of stepped in early on and made motorcycles that were strictly EV. And I know Harley kind of did something with the spinoff brand Livewire, I believe they had. So it's definitely coming, right? I think the one big thing is probably people look at the range, and it's kind of equivalent, right? I mean, you think of the range on some of these motorcycles, it's not going to be the same as a car, right? Nor an EV car, right? So it'll be more something that's meant for you to kind of bebop around in your local community and just have something you can utilize to just say, hey, I don't want to drive, I want to take my motorcycle, and it'll evolve, right? But obviously battery technology's got to change, right? Because batteries are big. So they're still trying to make it as compact and aesthetically pleasing as possible.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, you're hitting on all the notes, man. And that's, you know, throwing you on here. That's why I always say it's not exclusive to, because obviously you and I go back, and it's cool seeing your health journey. Let's just call it what it is. You're into cycling right before we hit record. You're talking about acquiring this new bike. So maybe elaborate on that, because I think that feeds into the evolution of overlanding as well, because here you are talking about passenger light trucks, even motorcycles now, and seeing that shift and what's going on. And you notably have a cool Audi. You like performance driving. You like going on meets. You like having a good time in southern. And you live in Southern California. But just the evolution of overlanding, and now like bikes, and like holy cow, like you're acquiring this new YT bike, and talk about that alt transportation. You could legit take that to work, and that's pedal assist and all that. So I don't know. Talk about just the evolution of bikes in your world, and also the overland stuff. Just like I said, the accessibility from tents, racks, outdoor kitchens. It's pretty cool. I don't know. There's kind of some overlap in my eyes, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, when I've kind of stepped back, and like now that I've gotten into cycling and really looked at it's just like, to me, it's just like cars. There's segments, right? And there's certain bikes that you're going to go on and they mean business, and like it's not like a leisure ride. You're going to be like, I'm in a position, it's carbon fiber, like I'm moving, right? Like my average speeds are going to be more than you're going to do on a beach cruiser. And I think when you look at e-bikes, there's so many different brands out there, and it really depends on what you want to do, right? I think that if you're just looking for a casual means of transportation, there's answers for that. I think for me, like when I had a demo from YT and I was riding an analog, as they call it, bike, I think the challenge for me was just the timing sometimes it takes when you're riding up a hill, right? Like you're exhausting a lot of energy. Like when you're climbing outdoors in the sun on a dirt path, like it's very different than riding on asphalt, climbing a big hill that a car drives up or that's paved, right? It's just different. Like you can be in saddle and you're like, okay, I can bang up this hill that I'm going up that's paved in the bike lane. But when you're off road, it's like, man, the handlebars are moving back and forth, and all those movements ideally just take away from the energy your body has, right? So now you need more hydration. And so when I tried the e-bike as a demo for the first time, it was like a game changer in so many ways, because you could still hold yourself accountable, right? There's different modes you can be in. If you want to be in a lower mode and still grind, you can. But if you're just like, hey man, I got an hour and a half I need to burn, I want to get maybe a few laps in this trail, get this energy out of me and move on with my day, you have that option too. And so I think the beauty of e-bikes, and like I guess I'll segment that and say mountain bikes specifically, has come to a level where the cost is getting lower, especially the cost of entry, right? I mean, we go back years ago, they were really expensive, right? And now they're efficient. Like you could ride them for a long period of time. They're adding bigger batteries. They're, in my mind, when I go downhill on that e-bike, because you have that low center of gravity motor, like it feels a lot safer because the rear tire is planted. It's not bouncing around. So from a standpoint of just saying, hey, like I feel good on this bike, I'm capable, because I didn't really know how much fitness level you needed to ride a mountain bike until you ride one. And it's a lot. Like to go downhill on a mountain bike safely and not hurt yourself, like you need to be off the saddle. And that requires a lot of stabilization in muscles that you may not use. So you're like, woo, okay, my shoulders are burning, right? So, I think that, and to like even, progress into what you said about overland, it's like having these I see that a lot. I went to Overland Expo, and which is, to me, it's a very similar lifestyle as off-road rec, right? Very similar. They didn't want to call it overland. It's off-road recreation, which is, in my mind, they're strict crossovers, right? So it's like, I saw so many like, sorted mountain bikes on the back of these overland vehicles, right? So it's like, now we can do our overlanding thing, but when we get to the trail, we can go bomb up the mountain, have some fun, charge our bikes off the vehicle because we got solar, right, in these batteries. And so like the lifestyle aspect of it is, to me, what's really cool. I think the evolution of just the gear and the amount of equipment that you can compact into a pickup truck or an SUV, and really truly, as you're driving down the road, you see, like, those that know, right? That's rooftop tent, but a lot of people are just like, they may not know what this big apparatus is on the top of this roof. Yet when you get to where you need to go, it's like, I look at these vehicles as like the headquarters, right? You set them up, you get your tent, you get all the kitchen stuff going, And it's like, now we're going to go on a hike, or now we're going to go on a bike ride, but we're staying here, right? The vehicle becomes essentially like the headquarters. It's like, this is our camp and the vehicle's our camp. And a lot of these amenities that are now available, the comfort levels of tents and how light they are, and the type of equipment. Like I was looking at the kitchen in the Tundra, I'm like, wow, like these little bowls and these cutouts and these drawers. It's like, it's all meant to do something off-road in a wilderness area and really have all the provisions you need for survival, right? Because that's what it's really all about. Like, you want for nothing. It's like, we're not ground camping, but we're in a comfortable environment. We're going to be able to make our own dinner out here in the forest or wherever we are, have a great meal, have a shower, like all these things, right? That as a hiker, you know, like you probably could have a lot of them, but you're relying on your own energy to bring that in, right? Like, your bag as a hiker can only be so heavy. So to have the comfort to say, hey man, we're going to drive, enjoy a cool drive for a few hours, go to a trail, and then get there and have almost like hotel creature comforts in the wild. I think it's pretty cool. I think these companies, when I go to these like events and you're seeing like, holy cow, like I wouldn't even thought about that. And it took someone's failing, right? Or figuring out when they got there, they didn't have this, to say like, yeah, my cutting board in the house isn't going to work the same, whether it's because it's light or it's whatever, that's heavy or whatever the case might be, right? It's like being on a ship in an RV. Everything for those vehicles are made differently than the home because they have to be lighter. They have to be more efficient for the application that they're used for. So I love it, man. I mean, I saw a Tesla on some AT trails and I was like, that's super cool. Like at the event, and had like spare tire carriers. So it's touching upon all types of vehicles that, you know, it's not just like, oh, you only have this. It's like, no, like, you know, it's like, I don't have to go, you know, over rock crawling. I just want to get out to where no one's around, set up my tent and just chill. That's what it's all about.
I mean, you went straight into my next question. Just your perspective and seeing that evolution is so stinking cool. Like, it's just so rad, and the function is the fashion. You know, it's cool when you see that, you know, the titanium forks, and as you said, the bowls, the cutting trays, and all that, and that progression and making it, like you said, I liked what you said there about the failure. Somebody being like, you know what, I think we could refine this, and just that refinement makes a better product. Price point goes down, and just, you know, again, bringing it full circle about the foam and the tires. Like, why is that a new thing? I mean, the technology and applying that, and just, you know, like Falken tires have been around for a while. You guys have made tires of all different varieties, but addressing the customer's needs. And it's always scary to be first to market on something like this that is maybe EV specific, off-road, this application, but there are people that do want it. And then it's like, okay, the Rivian maybe wasn't something I could see myself off-roading and overlanding, but you talk about solar, you talk about that the alt transportation. When you get there, you charge, you go solar, you get on the bike, whatever it may be, on two wheels. That experience, what used to be called, I would call, you know, off-road experience or overlanding. Some people would consider that glamping, right? Because, you got to be on the ground, you got to pack in, pack out. I'm happy with that compromise. Those creature comforts are something that I think if you can get away with, and it's not like wildly, you know, you don't want to be, you know, Rodney Dangerfield at the golf course with everything on it, but to have that shower or that experience, I think is really cool. So what else did you see at Electrify Expo that, you being in the industry for so long, you talked about just the customization, because we live in the custom world and modifying. And, you know, I love did a podcast with the guys at Ruined, which I love that name, Ruined, for their car club, not exclusive to Teslas, but all EV exclusive. What are some other things that, you know, specifically maybe speak to you, or you're like, wow, I've never even considered that?
Yeah, I think when I kind of looked at, I guess they call it like the micro EV section, with how many different brands are doing, you know, tricycles and skateboards. And honestly, like the skateboard thing, I think being like a tall person growing up, it was always, I mean, Tony Hawk's tall, so I know it's not like a major excuse, but I just never was into board sports. I never really got into them. I think a lot of it had to do with, you know, if you snowboard, the board is kind of based on your height, you know, because obviously like you have to have a special or certain type of board for your height. And so seeing like how fast some of these skateboards were that are like throttle EV and like having like motors for each like wheel, like that was pretty wild to me. And then seeing them race was just like the amount of skill set it takes to really be on these things and then just say like, now we're competing. It was a whole different world to me. It's like I've kind of seen those boards. I mean, and when I go like ride by the beach or something, you may see someone bebopping. I mean, there's speed limits there, so they're probably not the best space for them. But I mean, these were like serious athletes.
Oh
So
yeah.
I was just blown away by that. That was really cool. There was there was a brand that kind of had these like smaller K car size vehicles, and I kind of used the reference of like a moke, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of like what these are, right? It's the same size as like a moke. If you're familiar with that, it's like MOKE. They're like these little EV Jeep looking things, and it's kind of funny because like living here where I do, like in Orange County, I like to call them like rich people golf carts because like in like Newport and these areas, people just like drive around their communities and like, oh, that's like 50 grand for you to just go get the mail. That's cool. Like, and it's like, but that, and he's kind of taking that to the next level and making them more overland. And, one stood out because it looked similar to like a Suzuki Jimny, if you know what that is. So like, really cool, boxy looking. And I'm just, the first thing I do is like, oh, what's the tire fitment? I was like, 14-inch all terrain is tough, right? Like,
Keeps them clean.
Yeah. But it's like for us, like we don't dabble in those like unique sizes, unfortunately, because it's hard, right? Like the volume's not really there. So to make these bespoke sizes for something so small, it's like, how many are you going to sell? It's always, we've kind of grown up to a tire manufacturer now. They're like, okay, like we got to make stuff that's going to sell, right? What are the hot commodity sizes that are volume? So I thought it was really cool. Those vehicles are pretty cool. Some of the trailer stuff is very interesting to me too, because it's still kind of in the conceptual stages. I know there was one specific trailer I saw in Arizona that was very prototypey, and then the one we're across from at this event. But that's interesting. I think that how that evolves, and now you're able to take a trailer that is self kind of sustaining without propane and utilizing solar and having batteries. These are the type of things that'll be game changers for people, right? Because it's almost like, hey, like anyone can do it. Like it's autonomously can link up to your trailer, so it doesn't take a lot of effort there. It can push you up the hill if it's a certain type of vehicle to add power. So it's opening doors to where people would be intimidated by things that wouldn't be. And this is kind of going to go off a little tangent, but I remember I went to CES this year and I saw that a boat manufacturer they were demoing this new technology on how you can basically this software they had to dock a boat. I mean, that's like the hardest part. If you ever been in a boat or ever like operated a boat, like it's easy when you're in the water, really. Like if it's flat, you just throttle and you decelerate. That's rather easy, but I think the hard part is really docking the boat. And they had this whole software that was like, you just joystick it and it kind of guides you in. It's almost like self-parking. And it's like that kind of stuff makes these tricky hobbies or activities really the low-hanging fruit. And I think that, like to your point with glamping or camping or overlanding, whatever you want to call it, the average person may not just be down to ground camp, like
Right.
they may have fears of insects, animals, rattlesnakes, whatever the case may be, right? And knowing you're up in the ground that's comfortable, it just kind of gives you a little more sense of like security, right? Like I feel good up here, I'm safe, animals aren't going to get me. I think once you kind of get that grit about you, you start camping enough, you're like, they're not going to bother you. But your first time, if you're trying to bring a friend, they may not be into that kind of like, I don't know,
No.
ground camping, like we're just going to sleep on rocks, So it's like, we're going to sleep on the top of my Tacoma. You're going to love it. So the technology and comfort, I think, in a lot of these tents, like, I mean, they're definitely not cheap, but I think that the thought process that goes into them and, how many people you can sleep, like looking at that Tundra, I'm like, wow, like I've counted 5 people. Like you could literally take as many people could fit in that truck and camp comfortably with them. And that's
Yep.
to me is wild, right? And everyone's elevated. They're in a comfortable environment, with a family. You got one tent for the kids, one tent for the adults. So I think pushing that envelope of, recreation, outdoor activities is just going to keep thriving because, there's always something new and people are always trying to push the envelope. And whether it's a mountain bike or just a bike you commute on, like I see them all the time on the bike path. I'm like, I call them the silent killers because they're like pretty much like throttle bikes. And I'll just be on my analog bike. I'm huffing and puffing and they'll just like whiz by me. And I'm like, all right, I could have just, no, like on your left, on your right. But it's like, they're rolling, it's might as well be like a little motorcycle, but it's an evolution's only getting better, right? The range is increasing. So we're at a good time right now. I think these events are really opening the eyes of people to see like the EV opportunities that are out there. Like we had a lot of our employees show up and talking to some of them in the office, and they were just they had no idea. They were like, I didn't know this many like EV things existed. And I think what Electrify Expo brings is a very inclusive experience because you can try everything, right? Like we probably got asked 10 times, hey, can we go in your rig? Is this a part of the deal? I'm like, oh no, it's not like it's not like a tour item, People wanted to like walk inside and like see is this like an EV trailer? We're like, no, it's not. But that's the vibe though, right? Because you're driving things, you're trying things, and so it gives you this immersive experience when you're there to really say, wow, like if you didn't know about e-bikes, e-scooters, all these things, like you're going to get a great lesson on everything out there. You can try different brands, different power levels, see what's best for you. Like you probably couldn't even experience that at a bike shop because there's so many different brands, right? And a lot of your bike shops, they're kind of exclusive, tied to only certain brands. And here you got tons of brands, right? You could try it all. So, and they're all different experiences, right? And I think that's what's cool about it. And so is overlanding, right? I think a lot of people, you could look at something like the Tundra, some of the Rivians there, and kind of be like, oh, this is expensive. But it's like, dude, you could start small. You could overland in your Forerunner and not have a tent, right? You could easily set up a bed cushion, put your seats down. And that's just like, hey, do I even like this? Is this cool? Is this what I want to do? Like, and you can just evolve it from there. But knowing that you have a vehicle with the right equipment that can take you there, that's like step one, right? That's the most important thing, is knowing that the vehicle can take you there. You have the right equipment to get you there. And then once you're there, you could start building your comfort level based on what you feel you need, right? Like, oh, maybe we need more space because I'm going to take people with me and I don't have to set up this bed anymore. So now we need a tent. And I think that's what the beauty is of off-road rec is. It shows people what you want to do. Some people honestly don't want to camp at all. They're like, I want to be in a trailer. I want hot water. I want to cook a meal. I want to hang out on a table and drink my hot coffee enclosed without bugs. Like, and there was trailer manufacturers there for you to do that too. So they really have brought all these types of experiences in. And I think when you see people's faces and they're so mesmerized by it all, right? It's so hard to take it in. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, they're doing multiple laps. And I noticed that because someone was like, I was like, hey, do you want to sign up for our giveaway? And they're like, oh, I'm going to go drive this. And then they'll come back and be like, okay, like, what's this all about? Because they trying to try it all in an 8-hour span, which I think it's awesome.
Yeah, there's a sense of wonderment. The thing that comes to my mind is like, it's like a children's museum. You're like, wow, I never seen that. Just go ahead and touch it. Like, just like be one with it. And also I'm sitting here listening to you elaborate. And again, not exclusive to EV, just talking about overlanding and experience. Like I'm hooking up my Tundra. I'm doing a little glow up on my thing. I'm going to get a Go Fast camper. Nice. Do I go out there a lot? No, but like I can now, like, and just even tailgating or whatever. It's dope. So, my wife and son has a newer car than I do, and he's only 17. By the way, did you see him? He was out there announcing Electrify Race League. I don't know if you knew that. Dude,
I saw your post and I was like, it sounded like you. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, and I was like, wait, and then dawned on me, I was like, no, he's not here. He's a freaking MD. I was like, your son sounds just like you. He's got the same energy. I'm sure over the years been watching dad, taking notes. He's like, all right, I got this, dad. Like, You got to watch out,
Yeah.
man. That kid's gonna steal the throne, man. I
He said, no, he's got to
honestly,
earn it. You're not stealing
yeah,
anything. You
yeah,
earn it.
true, yeah.
But I
But
told him. That's what I told
he
him.
was good.
No,
He
thank
was
you.
good,
Yeah, and
man.
it's cool to see him and again doting on the Electrify Race League Expo. Obviously, my son, but those skateboards, yeah, it's gnarly. Had Mario on here. They had their second round. They're gonna have 4 rounds within that. Just they have the Asphalt Kings, this YouTube show, really highlighting that. So you got to watch that. Check that out. But my wife and my 2 sons, 17 and 10, Tyson, we watched that show. I had an epiphany. This is personal here. We're sharing like nobody else is listening. But
Sure.
2004 Formula Drift, this emerging motorsport called drifting. 4 rounds. How many rounds are in Electrify Race League? 4 rounds. I started when I was 23, and then he's 17. But it's just, I don't know. It's cool. And like, what a great correlation of this progression that we're talking about. Modifying some things, looking at customization, looking at where our kids' mentalities are. It's like kids now, like, oh, a car's stinky and loud. Like, I
Yeah,
want quiet and fast. Oh, and performance. And then this, you seen like what Heavy D Sparks did with his Cybertruck. He threw paddles on it and went like out in the desert. Like these,
I know.
and
That thing is wild.
unplugged performance. They took theirs out to the hammers. Everybody's just pushing the envelope, and this is like race cars where we're at. I mean, let's just call it what it is. We were 100 miles per hour pre-COVID, went to 0, and now I feel like we're going to $150 with a Dutch out the sunroof saying money anything. I'm joking, but
Yeah.
that was a song quote. But it's really cool to see your perspective and to see Falken's excitement, embracing, not like you said, the performance tires to this. And Falken had a big strong effort to be on Porsche. And you guys, I've seen your evolution of what you got cooking, and you guys have some exciting stuff, man. I'm really intrigued on who's going to adopt that AT and really take that. I think that's a good compromise of a tire. Like you said, that Wild Peak family has really grown, not by accident, but just in a beautiful way that people like, dude, sleeper, like, let's just call it what it is. It's like BFG, like this brand and okay, Toyota. And now it's like, no, Falken is a legit part of the conversation. Just like drifting comes out of Jim Farley's mouth, not a side dish. It's like, oh, we're going to Le Mans. We're going here. That's what I love about where things are at right now. People aren't like, brother, no, it's more like, yeah, it's
Totally.
you got it's exciting and seeing, obviously overlanding grow, manufacturers really embracing it. It's cool. And the Electrify Expo, outdoor recreational might push this East Coast. And then obviously Austin is a fairly progressive market. You look
Totally.
at everything they have there. You look at Texas as, the home of Toyota now, the home of PGA. Obviously, how about them Cowboys? Won't even get into that conversation. I'm joking. But
That's
but and Falken, you guys are making a lot of noise, sometimes less noise because of the tires and the foam. But
sure.
what
It's a good
what else
thing.
do you want? What's that?
That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. What else do you want to add kind of in closing here? What you do, what Falken's doing, any cool news, anything you want to announce, or where can they find out more information? Also, I gotta ask a question. How can one who's not a car guy maybe level up and find the right tire for their lifestyle? Because it's intimidating. You're like, I don't
Sure.
know. This one's that. This one's loud. This one's quiet. I don't, I'm more of a mall crawler, not really going to Arrowhead, or I'm not going out to Joshua Tree, but I don't know. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things there. I threw it out to you.
Yeah, no worries. I think one is, I guess, to go into the last question. I mean, falcontire.com, you can jump on there, our website. We've renovated it or updated it, I guess. It's awesome. It's a
Cool.
super cool website. It gives a lot of information on, what tire is going to be specific for your vehicle application. We also have an application guide. So you could put in the year, make, and model of your vehicle. It'll spit out the tires that we make based on that, based on trim. You can search by size. So there's a lot of different things that you can kind of look for into your next tire purchase at falcontire.com. I think new for us outside of the 460 is really just keep making awesome tires, right? We're at a point now where we do our homework, we do testing. And if a lot of times if a tire comes up that we've created and it's not up to snuff of who we benchmark against, it's like, all right, we kind of go back to the drawing board on this one, right? So we want to continue to make tires that our dealers can sell to end users and they're happy with. And that really is kind of our goal has always been tier one performance at tier two value. That's kind of like our mantra, right? We want to benchmark against the best, but we don't want to be the most expensive, right? Like, are we ever going to be the cheapest tire out there? No. I mean, and that's fine. I think that, like when you consider tires, it's funny because I remember one of our, like, I like to call him Yoda, but he's in our office. He's like been all over the tire industry and he's got so much knowledge. One of those guys that where you'll ask him one question and you'll be in there for 30 minutes and you're like, how did it take so long? But you learn so much, right? He's one of those guys, but he's like, tire purchases are like appliances, right? These things will last sometimes up to 5 years, depending on what type of tire it is. And a consumer's knowledge is not really there, right? It's like if you go to Best Buy, you're like, I need a refrigerator. Like, I don't know, man, I need my ice cream to stay cold. And if that's all you're concerned with, right, then he's like, oh, well, they all do that, but then they also do this, right? So
Interesting.
maybe it's efficiency, right?
Yeah.
And so much of the tire sale is based on really education. And honestly, it's like going to the doctor, right? Like you're just like, I need tires. And that counter person is going to be like, well, this is what you need. This is what ails you, kind of, right? Unless you're an enthusiast, right? If you're an enthusiast and and you've been on all the websites and your buddy's got a buddy and whatever the case may be, those are a smaller percentage, I think, of people. But your average consumer, right? They're going to it's going to be the location that's truly going to dictate what goes on that vehicle. And whether that's going to be based on whatever they're selling by brand or if your hot button is price, right? So I think for us, we always like to include a lot of nuggets for the salespeople about safety, right? Whether it's stopping distances in the wet, because that's huge, right? If I say our tire stops 5 feet shorter than a competitor's tire that could be $15 per tire less, like if you think about that for $60 over 4 years, is it really like, is the investment worth it? Like,
Yeah.
I think so, because if I stop 5 feet shorter, like I didn't hit anyone and we're all going to go to my kid's soccer game and eat pizza after versus now we're in an accident, we could get hurt or ruin the car. So these are the things I think a lot of consumers just don't think about because they're just black and round, like you said, right? It's like, it's somewhat of commodity, right? But when you really look at the science behind it, there's so much technology like Silent Core. We were one of the first tire manufacturers to introduce that in 2006. So adding foam to tire, like a foam sponge to tire in the Japanese market, right? And so just always kind of being on the forefront of technology, designing things that, consumers may not know is there, but it's like this. I think when it comes to like stopping distance in a tire, I hope you never have to use it. But it's like when you do, it's good to know you have it. It's like great insurance, right? Like you want the best insurance possible, both health and on your vehicle. Like hopefully you never use it, but when you do, you want to be taken care of. And that's kind of like what we put into our tires. We want to make sure they're always safe and, folks are going to get home and enjoy their lives and enjoy their families because the tire did its job. I mean, it's really, truly the only thing that connects the vehicle with the road. You can put all the tents, all the camping gear, all the wheels, all the suspension, all the lights and bumpers. But at the end of the day, it's the tires that are connected to the road, the gravel, the dirt, the mud, the snow. So making sure that you don't cut corners there and that you can have something that's going to be quality and reliable, that you can do all the things you want to do within your life on your vehicle. That's probably the most important thing in my mind.
That's great. I don't think we could end any better than that, man. Like I appreciate your time and again, saw your name on the docket and I said, yeah, of course, easy, no problem. But
I know
I didn't really anticipate this kind of theology. And obviously I know you're expert at tires, but all the other ancillary stuff, I think really feeds into it because it is that no news is good news, right? When you buy those tires, no news is good news. Like you say, the braking, the safety, the attrition, the value, that's really important because it is, like I said, it's that kind of unsung hero of your car. So it's great, man. And again, appreciate your health journey and you riding and all the success you've had personally. And then it's cool to see, obviously get involved with Electrify Expo and it's really cool. So Electrify Expo Outdoor Recreational, presenting sponsor of that. Thank you so much, Bakari Howard. Again, passenger light truck and motorcycle events manager of Falken Tire. If you see him out there, big, tall, black dude, he's riding a bike. He's out there getting, dude. And
yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we gotta get a ride in, Jared. Not virtually,
right.
but a real one. Actually, get out there and enjoy the animals.
Let's do it. I'm with it. I'll be on my Super 73 on your left.
All right, perfect. Yeah, that'll be you. Maybe you get a bell. Just get a bell.
Nah, I'm good. I speak for a living, so that's
you
all
are
good.
the voice. You are the voice.
Well, now Parker's going for it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to Falken Tire again for the presenting sponsor of the Electrify Expo outdoor recreational area. And again, they're developing tires for the EV market, the EV off-road market, overland, all the things. So check out Falken Tire, social media, YouTube, all the websites, all the stuff. Really easy. Falken. So thank you so much, Bakari Howard.
You're welcome. Take care, Jared.
Peace. Thanks for listening to the Electrify podcast, brought to you by the creators of Electrify Expo. Be sure to catch full video episodes on YouTube at Electrify TV and follow along on social media for daily clips and more.